the Bring Women Back to Work podcast aim to inspire, empower, and elevate women returning to the workforce by sharing authentic stories, experts' insights, and practical strategies to navigate career transition, building confidence, and thrive in a modern work environment. It's a platform to spotlight the real journeys of women who have re-entered the workplace or wants to re-enter the workplace, the leaders and allies who champion them, and the companies creating more inclusive future. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bring Women Back to Work podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Gentile, Head of Marketing and Sales for Switzerland and the founder and CEO of Bring Women Back to Work. And I'm so happy you are joining us for this third episode. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Aurelie Litynski, founder of Happitude at Work, leadership coach, keynote speaker, and passionate advocate for workplace well-being. Aurelie is also the author of the inspiring book 100 Ideas for a Positive Work Culture, which is all about creating environments where people feel seen, heard, and supported, something we strongly believe at Bring Women Back to Work. I was honored to contribute to her book, and in my chapter, I focused on the importance of building a strong sense of community in the workplace, especially when it comes to supporting women returning to the workforce. In this episode, we will explore the thinking behind Aurelie's work, her vision for positive organizational culture, and what leaders can do to foster real change. Let's get started. Aurelie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Hi, Vanessa. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast.
Thank you. Aurelie, for our audience, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. So I'm Aurelie Litynski, a positive work culture expert. I'm also a certified Chief Happiness Officer. I do love the title. And a certified Chief Wellbeing Officer. I have other certifications in change management, emotional intelligence, stress management, and so on. And I'm really passionate about the topic of positive work culture. I've been struggling a bit with that in the past, and I believe that everyone should feel good and be able to perform at our best, right, in the workplace. So this is what I do now since many years, helping companies and multinational companies all over the world, employees and leaders to build, to foster a positive work culture.
All right. So that means you are the most balanced person on earth, right?
Well, what does it mean, balanced person? I think I'm just human. There are days I can handle it better than others.
All right. So, Aurelie, thank you for the intro. And my first question, so what inspires you to write your book? What impact do you hope it will have in today's workplaces?
So, I have the idea of my book since four years approximately. And every time I do a session to a company with, a lot of employees and leaders in the room, every time I do a session, I always share a toolbox, meaning that if I do a session on positive psychology, a session on emotional intelligence, on stress management, people will just leave and build their own toolbox during the session. And every time at the end, it was really the highlight of the session. So everyone was telling me, oh my God, we love your toolbox. We love these ideas, which are very practical, but we want more, more ideas, more tools to add into our toolbox. So along the years, I really gathered a lot of details, a lot of ideas, a lot of stories, best practice sharing. And I created my own Excel document to be able to share different ideas depending on the session, depending on the company and industry. And at one point, I was like, I really need to write a book with all of these ideas because I have so much on my computer. I'm always collecting stories, best practices, and content and expertise from different experts in the world. I need to collect everything and to write a book. So the idea has been in my head for the last 4 years, and a very good friend of mine, Anna, that you know quite well as well, right? She inspired me to write the book since many years, and I didn't want to. And at one point I was like, yes, let's do it. Let's write this book. Let's share all of this database workplace I have on my computer and in my head to really open it to the people and to give my clients and employees and leaders who really want to have a change, a positive change in the workplace, then they will have this guide. I think my book is really to have a practical and accessible guide for anyone, for leaders, for teams, for individuals who really wants to spark a positive change, because it's such a practical guide, easy to use. You can just flip the page. You don't need to read, from page 1 to page 280. You can just open a chapter depending on your needs, depending on your challenge, and just, get a mix of content, a mix of expertise, a mix of ideas, best practice sharing, stories, because small steps can really have big action, right? So I really hope the book helps workplaces to shift from being just performance driven to also being human centered, where people feel safe, appreciated, and empowered to thrive.
Absolutely. And I really love your book. I also read a couple of ideas and chapters in the book. And what I most like it is the idea of the QR codes. So if you want to know more or go into a deep dive, you go into the QR codes and then you read it. You read more, you have more content, not just the book per se, but really the more content around the book is provided. So very, very nice idea. I love that. And obviously, I encourage everybody to look into this book because it's, for me, also a guide for every company that should be lived like a Bible. This is the company Bible that everybody should use.
That was the idea behind, right? It's why I have 10 different chapters with 10 different topics, all related on how to foster a positive work culture, of course. But meaning that, if in your team you have let's say in your team you have a lot of stress at the moment, then you are going to read the chapter on stress management. Or if you need to learn more on how to give constructive and positive feedback, then you will read first the chapter of feedback, right? And this QR code gives you access to extra resources on my website. So the book is still alive. I imagine the book to be alive, for many, many years, right? So I will update all the resources on my website through the years, through what's happening in the world, depending on what's happening. We all need to adapt to our new way of working, right? So that's the idea in the QR codes as well.
Very cool idea. And you have one chapter that I was part to, and I'm still very proud to be there forever. And it's chapter 56, if I'm not mistaken. But in general, right? So I write about the community in the perspective of the example of bringing back to work. But what does community mean in the context of your book? And why does community in the workplace matter to you?
Well, we know from research that having good relationships and a sense of belonging is extremely important to be happy in our life. If you look at the Harvard study of adult development, which is the longest study on happiness, these studies show that strong relationships are the most important factor for our long-term health and well-being. And this applies to both our personal life and also to our professional lives, right? So when we foster a sense of community in the workplace, we are not just creating happier teams, we are also improving resilience, collaboration, and of course, performance. So I believe that people feel safer to contribute when they are part of a community. They feel as well more motivated to grow together. They are more likely to stay, of course, in the company when they belong to something, when they have this sense of belonging that we truly need to feel good in our life and also at work. So a strong community for me transforms the workplace from a place where we have to be into a place where we want to be, where we feel good, where we wake up almost every day, let's say, and we go to work with, a nice feeling to contribute to something, to work with people we enjoy and we even, sometimes like a lot. I remember my days when I was working in companies. Certain of my teams felt like being part of a family, right? We used to call each other the Farm and Pay Forever. It was the name of our team. And we are now best friends. So my ex-colleagues became my best friends. So I didn't have a chance to be part of a community organized from a company because I worked in a smaller company, but my team members were my people at work. And it was like a community in a way. So I think it's extremely important to develop this sense of belonging into a community or with your colleagues in the workplace.
Yeah, this is great. And I think the community is also, we are not meant to be alone, right? We need this community approach also to lift each other up, and especially in a female environment, to be inspired by people in the community, to be like-minded, with people that has the same vision like you, looking after the same goal like you. I think this aspect is also very important within a community, no?
Exactly. Of course, we need to have people around us. This is a human need we have, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, and we need to find our people. Sometimes it can be a community within the workplace, a community outside of work. It can be having the right support around us to be at our best, basically, and to feel good, to feel safe, to be ourselves.
And you know what, Aurelie, this brings me to my experience within the community. So when I most needed a community around me, and that was during the pandemic. During the pandemic, I was locked with my two boys, and, I never had an exchange with the neighbors, because no time for neighbors, right? You have your daily life, you have to go after your kids, the agendas, your work, and all of that. But then suddenly, the neighbors became your closer community. We helped each other. We looked after each other. And since then, the approach of a community, or at least the understanding of a community, is so strong for me. And it's more than just, building something within a company, but it's really a human need to have that. And I felt that the most when I was locked in my apartment with the kids.
I felt that as well when I was writing the book. It was not for me during COVID. It was last year. But, without my own community, my own support, let's say, which I could call a community, I had my support team, right? A mix of my best friends, a mix of my friends, of people in my network to really, showing me support, giving me the right motivation and the needs I had, right? Like the mental support and everything else. So I really built around me the last year, which was a very difficult year writing this book. I built the right support team around me to be able to perform at my best, right? And to feel good and to go through this very challenging time as a working mom, writing a book, owning my own business. And I mean, you know how it is. So it can be very challenging. So yes, finding the right support and the right community around us is extremely important, whatever you are going through in your life.
Yeah, to survive in general. Right?
Yes.
So talking about network and community, for me, this is very close to each other. Talking about mothers, talking about a high schedule of kids' schedule and your own appointments and your private life and whatever. I mean, we own an agenda that is more complex than a CEO without a PA. So this PA becomes your community, becomes your network, the ones that supports you when you are not around, or when we need one or two hands more.
Definitely. I cannot agree more.
In your experience, how does building a strong internal community contributes to retain and empowering specifically women, especially those returning to work after a career break?
Well, I mean, you know it very well, Vanessa. I think when women return to work after a break, whether for kids, for health, or for personal reasons, they often come back with a lack of confidence. They often come back with a fear of being behind or feeling like they need to prove themselves again. I mean, at least it's what I experienced myself when I came back to work after my kid, right? I remember it very well for myself. It was really hard for me to be back on track. Before my kids, I had a lot of responsibilities. I was traveling a lot. And as soon as I came back from maternity leave, well, I was not able to travel anymore. I was working part-time, so I lost a bit of my responsibilities. And of course, this had an impact of my self-confidence, of, everything around, right? But again, I was really lucky to be part of a great team with great managers who understood my situation and who really adapted my way of working to my new situation as a working mom. So I think being part of a community at work can really help to have this support. Yeah, it can really help to build confidence, to be mentored by other women, other people, to see other women in leadership, to have, a role model, to hear other stories, to share challenges that we are going through as a working parent, right? So I think all of that and learning from each other. And I think all of that will definitely have an impact on how you feel when you return to work. So being part of a community, having the right support around you and feeling that you belong to the team would definitely make a huge difference. So yes, all of this will definitely help to empower and to retain women, because I think you met a lot of women as well who went back to work and their job descriptions completely changed, right? Because the last 6 months, a year, or whatever the time they took for their child, well, things changed in the workplace. So they come back and everything was completely different. And I met a lot of women, like they were talents in the team, but they left because it was not adapted to their own situation anymore, right? The new job descriptions was not adapted to their own situation. So I think we can, if we build the right community, if we build the right support, we can definitely empower and retain these women who are taking a break for whatever the reason they need to take a break and come back to work in a safe and positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, a community in work is mostly what I see around me is mostly happening within internal people. So internal people that build this community for themselves. And I see, for example, at Salesforce, they build communities as a process of belonging, right? So community of outforce, community of Latinos, community of military services, community of so many things. There are two ways, right, to see it. When you have your own community within at work, when you go back to work, this community maybe doesn't exist anymore as you left, because it's based on internal people that work there that are not there anymore. And I think that there are two ways to see it, right? Having a process in place, a community part of the value of the company is different, because it doesn't matter, or independently how long you will stay away or you are coming back, the community will be there for you. It's different when you have communities built out of people, because people leave, people change, and then you don't have that anymore. It was what actually happened to me after my second break. And when I came back, my job was occupied and they just forgot me in the process. The entire leadership changed and they just forgot me. So when I came back, my job was occupied, taken away, and I had to figure it out myself. What is next for me? And I think that there is, especially in big companies, do you need to have also processes in place that save people, independently of individuals coming and being part of the community.
No, definitely. And that's why I think it's very important to create the right culture within the team, within the company for, let's say, to create the right culture within the team and within the company, that when women or men, like when people are coming back after a break, they still feel that they belong to the team. They still feel safe to speak up and to say, hey guys, my position doesn't exist anymore. Can we find something, right? Where can I work? In which team can I be? What can we do with my position? Because if you are a talent, if you are a person who is engaged and feel good within the team, you will find solutions, hopefully, or at least, you will feel safe to speak up and to try to find a solution in a challenging time. But if we have a toxic environment, then, you might come back from your break, see that your job is gone, and then don't really speak up and say, okay, well, then I'm gone. Yeah. So we are losing talent because of that. And it's why I'm advocate since many years on creating a positive work culture where people feel safe, where people feel seen, where people can really belong to the team in order to perform at their best, right? I think working in a toxic culture is the worst thing we can do, and we shouldn't stay, and we should try to make a change. So there are a lot of things we can do to create a positive work culture and to make sure that people have this sense of belonging and good relationships in the workplace.
And Aurelie, do you think this is clear, this happens on the ground, this lives on the ground, but this has to be lived also top down, right? And it has to be part of the value of the company.
Definitely. I always say it has to be top down and bottom up, because if you only work with leaders, for example, when I do my leadership programs in companies, often the companies ask me to do a leadership program, or we build a leadership program together, but they don't really involve the rest of the employees. We just work on the leaders, which is good as a start, right? Because it really starts at the top. However, after a few weeks, a few months, we really need also to start at the bottom. We really need to teach all the employees on how to build more emotional intelligence, or let's say how to develop their emotional intelligence, how to foster a positive work culture. Because if only the leaders are implementing initiatives, but the employees do not understand why and how, then it will not work. So it has to be top down, but bottom up as well. So we have to start small with the right intention. It has to be a plan. There is a whole strategy basically on how to really build a positive work culture. But yes, of course, starting with the leaders is always great, but we need to involve all the layers in the company. It has to be part of the culture. It doesn't have to be just one initiative or one thing we do to make the workplace better. It should be the DNA of everyone, right? We all have, let's say, we can all take action to build a positive work culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes absolutely sense. At the end, everybody is responsible for their own happiness at work. Right.
It's what I always say in the book, right? Your happiness is your own responsibility. It starts with you. Of course, other people will have a huge impact and will have a huge influence on it, but it really starts with you.
That's true. And I fully agree on this. And I read it a couple of weeks ago that 5% is what happened to you in life, which you cannot avoid. But 95% is what you can do with this 5%. It's on your responsibility. So that means that whatever happened to you is just 5%, but what you do with it is 95%. So I think that's pretty strong, saying that your life will be always in your hands, and doesn't matter what happened, you will always be the one driving it.
Definitely. We can all have an impact on ourselves. I mean, first of all, we have an impact on ourselves and we have an impact on others as well. So let's pay attention to our behaviors. Let's pay attention, to take care of ourselves, because if we take care of ourselves, we'll be then able to project a good energy to help other people, to support other people. But we need to start with ourselves first. That's for sure. Mm-hmm.
And Aurelie, what practical advice would you give to leaders or organizations that want to foster a more inclusive and supportive workplace culture? And we touched already upon some couple of examples, but what can they do to start now? They need to read your book first.
Yes, they need to read my book because they will get 100 ideas, that's for sure. But, they need to start small because, any shift doesn't happen overnight. So you really need to start small. And I believe that we also need to focus much more on the emotional level. So it's all about, asking our teams, asking our people around the teams, the colleagues, how do they feel? How do they really feel at work? It's about creating spaces where different voices, and especially those who are not often heard, can really speak freely. It's not about organizing one initiative every quarter, but it's about embedding inclusion and support into the daily routines, right? So it might be working on adapting your meeting culture, for example, to make sure everyone is involved, to make sure that you start your meeting differently, right? I share a lot of ideas in the book on how to start meetings differently. It can be as well giving a voice to everyone, finding a nice and fun way to give a voice to everyone. It can be adapting your meeting culture in terms of, instead of doing a meeting for a full hour, then you do 55 minutes or 25 minutes instead of 30 minutes. And this will allow micro breaks, right, for us to recharge in between meetings, because many of us are in meetings the whole day. So, these small initiatives or things like, teaching the team to give and to receive feedback, teaching employees and leaders to develop their emotional intelligence so they can regulate their emotions much better. They can manage relationships at work much better. It's also about, small things like giving more recognition and praising people and giving more positive feedback, and not only constructive feedback, but also positive feedback, celebrating our small wins and team's effort. All of these small actions will have such a big impact.
And it doesn't cost anything.
Exactly. And by developing these small initiatives with big impact, you are creating the right culture for people to feel good, at least most of the time. Of course, we all have our days. Sometimes we are super stressed. Sometimes we are annoyed. We are frustrated in the workplace, and that's fine. But we need to create a space where we can feel good most of the time, where we can support each other, where we can count on each other, where we can learn from each other. And again, this is the power of having community. This is the power of belonging to a place, right? So there are a lot of small tips, small ideas, small initiatives that you can implement in your daily life at work, so you can really build the right culture for the people to feel good and to perform at their best.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And my last question, with my Salesforce lens, talking about AI all the time, do you think that AI will support a supportive workplace culture?
Yes, well, AI, we need to live with it. We need to accept it. We need to embrace it, right? And I always say your emotional intelligence is what will really set you apart as a leader and as a great colleague. Because of course, AI can help you to work smarter. Using AI can be, you can be an expert with AI. You can use your expertise. You can use your intelligence. You can use your technical skills. But your emotional intelligence, your human skills, it's what really will make a difference in the workplace with our future of work, right? Because especially with the rise of artificial intelligence, the more we use technology, the more we will need authentic interactions, right? Authentic human interactions and not just a robot. So the more we use this technology and the AI, well, the more we need to have interactions with people also, right? So I think we need to live with AI in a clever way, that we also need to develop our human skills to be able to use AI in a clever way and to make sure our human skills will make a real difference in the workplace. But for that, we need to learn much more about it. So I'm always, it's always a bit tricky when I see that every company speak about AI, but let's also speak about EI, your emotional intelligence. We should use both in the workplace for our future of work.
Thank you so much, Aurelie, for your thoughts. It was for me actually very interesting, and now looking forward to hear the feedback of our listener. And this was the podcast with Aurelie, and thank you so much. Don't forget to check the book. All the best, and we will follow you. We will continue to follow you on our social media engagements and next opportunities. Thank you, Aurelie.
Thank you. Thank you to you.